Okay, let me ask you a couple of questions.
Yes,
Did you
ma'am.
take these guns at all anywhere, like to a range
No,
and shoot them?
no, not nowhere out of the house. Not even in my backyard. They never left the premises.
How did they find out that you had them?
ATF has been going around to weapons manufacturers, excuse me, to parts manufacturers. And of course, I was using parts manufacturers to buy receivers, to buy 80 unfinished receivers, so-called 80%, trigger groups and barrels and so on and so forth. So the ATF went around to these companies and said, give us your customer list or else.
Oh,
And some
well,
number of them complied. And then ATF went around to local jurisdictions that happened not to believe in the Second Amendment as much
yeah.
as they do in, say, Texas, and said, okay, get this guy, get this guy, get this guy. And I was on that list because I was using these parts manufacturers, using my own name with my own credit card. There was no subterfuge. The guys who tossed my place know that all my weapons were in one place, right? And all my, my tools were down there in my workshop. There was no, because I never had any idea that New York State would somehow see a law-abiding citizen manufacturing his own hardware
Yeah.
in the privacy zone home as this kind of existential threat. But here we are.
Right. So they basically found out from looking around online. I mean, so clearly they're looking for people who are making ghost guns. They're clearly, there's like a task force and they're out there searching for people making weapons with 3D printers, ghost guns, right?
You say looking around online. I mean, no, they're actually contacting. I mean, ATF is going around to manufacturers, right?
Okay,
Because
right.
remember
So it's,
these,
yeah.
right? Yeah,
So it's,
because
I
these
think
got
maybe a combination because they did say in this press release that you had acquired certain things online or kits or, online
I acquired
retailers and
100. I acquired
yeah.
100% of my parts online.
Yeah,
I
so
mean, I
maybe
never
they
bought
are
it right.
looking. So they're looking all over, basically, but they are looking for people making ghost guns. That's what it sounds like.
Well, you keep saying ghost guns. I prefer the term traditional guns. There's
Traditional
nothing
guns, yeah.
ghostly. There's nothing ghostly about any of the weapons I manufactured or any of the
Right,
weapons
right.
anyone
They're
else made.
real.
In other words, I mean, this is important though, right? Because
Right,
words
right,
matter. And the
right.
fact is that there is nothing. The only reason, first of all, I am not under any obligation to serialize a weapon unless I plan to transfer that weapon.
Right.
Okay, and the rifles I made, for example, let's see, Alpha, Switchblade, Ranger, Wildcat, Epoch, Scarab, Diana, and Mars.
These are
My
all the names
rifles.
of your
There's
rifles.
my rifles. Yeah, I built
Okay.
Diana for my daughter, named it after the Roman goddess of the hunt. Okay. I wasn't planning to transfer any weapons anywhere, right?
Uh-huh.
So the idea that it's not serialized and that's a problem is, I want to say, a red herring, but maybe worse than a red herring, right? Because the fact is, if there's a crime, if a weapon is used in a crime, okay,
Yeah.
if you recover the shell casings, if you recover the spent round, and if you recover the weapon, you can do a ballistic. There's nothing that's stopping you from doing a ballistics match, right, between a recovered projectile and a an unserialized weapon.
Hmm.
So the serial number is for state administrative purposes, but there was nothing to administer here because these weapons were mine. I made them in my own home, and I had no plans to transfer them anywhere or to anybody. And again, the state has had all my records, including my email records, since they raided me. They know this.
They know that you weren't on 8chan saying, I'm going to go and do these terrible things with all my guns that I just made.
Correct. Correct.
Right.
And by the way, not only do they know that, they also should know, if they've done their homework, that the kind of stuff I say online, the kind of company I keep online, is very different from that whole kind of fever swamp of the
Sure.
internet, right? Um, so yeah, I mean, they should know, for example, that one of the things I did here as a conservative was I did some local detective work for the Vietnam Wall of Faces Memorial, Wall of Faces website, excuse me. I worked with, I was a point man doing some detective work for Colonel Dana Quist, trying to find someone with my last name who was KIA in Vietnam. They should know that I've talked to theologians, I've talked to philosophers, I've talked to artists, I've talked to all kinds of people online. But the what I'm doing as a conservative is not let's take down the system.
Right.
It's like, no, let's be conservative, which means let's start with an attitude of gratitude and then virtuous building and virtuous political combat. They should know all this.
Right. Let me ask you about that, about
Yes, ma'am.
foundationism. So
Yes,
you
ma'am.
started a group called Foundationism Online,
The Foundationist Society.
the
Yes, ma'am.
Foundationist Society,
Yes, ma'am.
Foundationism. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Was this before the raid?
Oh yeah, this was years before the raid.
Okay. So I just want
Yeah.
to read a little bit of this because I'm curious if this has something to do with why they targeted you,
Yes,
because
ma'am.
this is a political organization that you created. As you said,
Yes,
you're a
ma'am.
conservative, but you're not a Republican nor a Democrat. You're
Yes, ma'am.
independent. You're politically homeless.
Yes, ma'am.
Foundationism is an American political movement. Broadly speaking, it's the politics of people who build things for a living. Our beliefs fall outside the boundaries of traditional left right politics. We are conservative about some issues and liberal about others. We are secular but friendly to believers. We are forward looking but respectful of tradition. We love our country with our eyes open. Although we acknowledge the existence of injustice and the need for change in our great republic, we are not revolutionaries. We don't believe in burning down the house in order to fix what is wrong with it. We believe in free markets, but only as vital engines for wealth creation, not as the blueprints for just and functional societies. We believe in borders and the defense of borders, but we understand that the most important borders are invisible and can only be defended by truth plainly spoken, love of order, hatred of injustice, and courageous trust in one's fellow citizens. I mean, this goes on a bit, but has this been edited at all since you were arrested, since they raided your
Nope.
home? Okay,
Nope.
because this says peacefully, we're not revolutionaries, right? So I'm curious if that if it was translated differently before. So it's
You can look at,
interesting
yeah, I mean, you
that
can look at our manifesto is a 10-point manifesto, right? What's our manifesto? See deeply, listen closely, reason honestly, speak clearly, act bravely, deny the self, defend the individual, respect tradition, face the present, cultivate the future.
okay, but they look at so they see this guy online who's buying parts, making weapons, and they see that this guy also has a manifesto, like a
Mm-hmm.
political group, doesn't fit a political box,
Mm-hmm.
has a manifesto online, a website online for this political group,
Yep.
and they so maybe that has something to do with why they targeted you. But what really pointed out to me, what stood out to me, I should say, in this indictment was they wrote here, the surge in ghost guns in our neighborhoods is a major contributor to the violence plaguing our communities, and my office
Right.
is working tirelessly to stop the proliferation in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
Okay, fine, great. You should be going and doing that if the guns are out there circulating and people are using them to commit crime, right? But you have not; these guns haven't left your home. You're not planning on. You're just a hobbyist, an
Correct.
enthusiast who's
Correct.
learning so that you could maybe have a skill that you could then market and sell.
That's
And they're
correct.
going after you. I mean, this is infuriating, to be honest. This is, I'll tell you, it's infuriating for a variety of reasons. First of all, it's infuriating because New York, being the state with the strictest gun laws in the country, who's constantly battling it out with the Supreme Court and the Second
Correct.
Amendment, right? They're
Correct.
constantly in that battle.
Mm-hmm.
So there's of course the Second Amendment aspect to this, but there's
Yes.
also just the crime aspect of this. Hello, New York, go and knock on an actual criminal's door. Actually make our streets safer.
Right.
Stop
Right.
going after people who are not committing crime, let alone not committing violent crime. Stop sticking them in Rikers for a week, threatening them with 18. I don't want to pay. I'm sorry, Dexter, but I am not willing to support you for 18 years. I'm not going to do it. I don't think it's fair that
You
I
don't
would
want me
have
to
to
have
do
free
that.
housing for 18 years?
I don't. I'm not interested in supporting you for 18. You
Okay.
seem
Okay.
capable enough
Oh,
on your own.
okay, racist.
So,
I'm just kidding.
so it's insane to me that they're
Yeah.
sitting there looking us other citizens, right, at all of the rest of us in the face, saying,
That's
"Well,
right.
we want you to put this. They want us to pay
Bro,
for you to go to jail while there's
prison.
actual
Yeah.
criminals out prison, while there's actual criminals out there roaming the roads who are actually harming people."
Correct.
I mean,
Correct.
that is infuriating, especially in the time. Like I said, this is infuriating on multiple levels, but that aspect of it is so deeply infuriating and insulting
Imagine
that
how
they
I
would
feel.
go. I mean, I couldn't. Right. I can only imagine.
Yeah.
But this is go after the real criminals. What are they doing? What are
Right.
they
I mean,
doing?
this is
Why
what I'm
haven't they
saying.
just? Honestly, Dexter, all they should be doing, looking at your internet search history, looking at your past, looking at all of this, they should have just slapped you on the wrist and said, "Look, register your guns. and go your merry way. Register your gun, and then you could battle that out with the Second Amendment. You could then
Sure.
take that to
Right.
court. You
Right.
could then make a stink about
Make
that,
a
right?
stake about that. Exactly. Well,
But
this is why it's funny
this
you
is
say.
crazy that they're saying 8 years. We'll reduce it to 8 years. Like
Right.
what? I don't
Right.
want you in. I will not support you for a damn day. I'm sorry, not going to do it.
I feel the racism coming off you in waves. But wait. Listen. It's funny you said a slap on the wrist because one of the things I did was my legal team was interested in when they were constructing the case. One of the things they did was they wanted to get permitting data from the NYPD. You mentioned permitting. You mentioned registration. Right. So we filed a Freedom of Information request with the NYPD to get their permitting data to show that their permitting system is broken and biased and just beyond the pale, right? So they slow walked that FOIL request for a long time. When we finally got the data, it was kind of in a raw format that my guys couldn't use. So I wrote a software stack, because remember, I'm a data engineer. So I wrote a software stack, open source, to process that data and land it in a database so they could run their analytics on it. That's, again, it's open source. You can go download it. My GitHub name is Binary Machines, and the name of the repository is called Lex. And that's because I was thinking while I was working on this stuff about this notion of this only being worth a slap on the wrist, if even that much.
If even
and,
that,
and
right.
the saying in the legal profession is de minimis non curat lex, right? Mm-hmm. The law should not be concerned, or the law does not concern itself with trivialities.
Right.
And that's what, in a sane world, that to me, it's a non-issue, but at best or at worst, it's a triviality. There are people shooting up the place in New York. We know this. Yeah. I've lived here all my life. Go find the people who are shooting up the place.
Yeah.
I'm with you to go find the people shooting up the place. That's not me, And so, yeah, this is a problem. And again, look, I'm not surprised that Governor Kathy Hochul, she's into reviving the black codes, and well, that's kind of how they do. Okay, very well. I'm a little surprised at his honor, Mayor Adams, because he was very vocal around the time of the Bruin decision in saying that, well, we don't want to comply with this law. We don't like this law because people having guns, people being able to exercise their constitutional rights would lead to the quote unquote wild west. Now, this is the same mayor who saw fit to get up in front of a microphone on purpose and say, we're a sanctuary city, okay? All are welcome. So here you have someone who is absolutely champing at the bit to violate the Second Amendment rights of American citizens in New York City, and he makes some ridiculous claim about the wild west, but he seemingly has no problem inviting all the issues of the wild south and the wild east into our city. And now it's a problem. Do you see what I'm saying? So there's just, on so many levels, this just does not work, Right. And so again, look, I'm a nobody with a day job, and I don't even rock with, again, I said I'm politically homeless. I mean, I don't even rock with a lot of kind of the more popular names in conservatism, because I'm conservative for different reasons. I'm conservative not because I left the left and started listening to Fox News.
Yeah.
I'm conservative because I grew up in working class Black America. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, I grew up in working class Black America. Mm-hmm. I grew up around people who were fanatical about education and hitting the books and cutting a good figure in public so you represent us right. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's like I grew up learning about these people like Frederick Douglass and Booker T. Washington and learning about, kind of self-determination and doing for self and DIY and making your own thing. I watched, when I was in junior high school, we bought our first house. I watched my father gut and renovate that house from the inside out, room by room, right?
Yeah.
That's how I'm a conservative. You feel me?
Yeah.
And so I'm not, it's like I'm not in this to be an activist for some side. I'm not interested in politicians or parties at all, except as instruments. I'm interested in fundamental values. And I'm interested in, I at some point when I stopped being a young dumbass, right, I started realizing that it was okay to love your country, warts and all, with your eyes open. You know what I'm saying? And that was
Yeah.
around the time I left the left. But yeah, this is
I like that
infuriating.
phrase, by the way. I feel I'm,
Young
I'm very
dumbass,
critical of the. Yeah.
you can use that one. It's okay.
Yes, I'll be using that on my Twitter
Just
profile.
give me my 10%. It's fine.
No, I like that, because I'm very critical of the country, and I think many of us are. We're not.
Yes, ma'am.
We do feel very politically homeless, and
Yes, ma'am.
I like that I love my country, warts and all, but I still do love my country. I
Yes.
want it, but with my eyes open. I love my
Yes,
country
ma'am.
with my eyes open, and I see the warts. I know the downfalls of my country.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
want my country to be better. I want
Yes,
my
ma'am.
country to represent me better, and I want my country to not be going after law-abiding citizens that they say, well, you broke this law that they made up. That it's their
Right.
own law that then that could, like I said, that's why I say if they just would have given you the slap on the wrist and said, okay, you have to now register these or get whatever, then that is a Second Amendment issue that we can
That's
battle out.
that we can battle out in court.
That we can
right.
battle out in court, right? Because I do think
This
that
is-
also should be taken up. I'm a pretty staunch. I mean, I used to be like kind of radical when it comes to the Second Amendment.
Yeah.
I kind
Yeah.
of became less radical as I got a little older because I realized I didn't want billionaires to have nuclear weapons. So I realized maybe it wasn't okay to think everybody could just have anything they wanted, because at some point then you just got Bill Gates having a nuke.
Yeah, that'd be bad.
Right, and the rest of us not having one, so that would be a bit much. So I do believe in some controls, but look, we have to just go after the people using guns in the bad way, the people who are actually committing crime with the guns. That's the issue. It's not the law-abiding citizens with the guns. It's the
No.
criminals.
And look, the reason
That's
why
like
they
saying
go
we all can't drive because there's drunk drivers.
That's right. Well, listen, the reason they go after people like me is because it's easy. Do you know what I'm saying? Like that's
Right.
in other words, look, like we have a pretty good idea who is actually shooting up the place, right?
Yeah.
But again, I'm easy because look, when they raided my place, the records will show it's like I got locked up like a gentleman. In fact, I didn't try to break balls or anything like that. There was no harsh language. I mean, I had a perfectly civilized conversation with the cops that drove me to the holding facility at the local precinct. So it's like I'm easy in
Yeah.
that respect. Like it's easy to go after people after the law abiding. And meanwhile, there are people shooting up the place and you're not going after them.